Here with me now is Trump attorney John Lauro. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Mr. Lauro. This weekend, the judge rejected your request for 3 more days to consider the special counsel's proposed rules for how to handle evidence. The proposed protective order that would let Trump use some sensitive information but not take that information with him. Will you agree to that?
Well, first of all, this protective order that's being suggested by the Biden administration is an effort to keep from the press important non-sensitive information that the Biden administration has that may speak to
This isn't by the Biden administration. This is by the special independent counsel.
No, here for this reason, no. The independent counsel, it's not independent, it's special counsel, has to get the approval of Merrick Garland in order to go forward. Joe Biden said in November 2022 that he wanted to see President Trump prosecuted and taken out of this race.
There's
so it
no,
is the Biden
I'm just going to stop you because there's no evidence
but the
that
bottom line is,
Joe Biden is involved in this. And you're right, it's a special counsel. Let's just stick to the question. Do you believe that this is something that you'll agree to?
The point is that we will not agree to keeping information that's not sensitive from the press. The press and the American people in a campaign season have a right to know what the evidence is in this case, provided that this evidence is not protected otherwise. So we're going to oppose it, as we have. But for whatever reason, these lawyers on the prosecution team want to keep that from the press.
Well, won't the evidence come out in trial anyway?
That the press, some of it will, not all of it. I'm shocked that the press isn't lined up objecting to this protective order, because not only is President Trump being attacked for his First Amendment rights, now these prosecutors are trying to impinge on the freedom of the press.
Okay, let's stick to, I appreciate you trying to stick up for us.
What's happening. I'm telling you.
I appreciate you trying to stick up for us, but let's talk about the actual
I'm telling you what's going on right now.
Substance of what they were trying to do in the filing, which was try to make the point not only that they want to keep the discovery information, what the witnesses said, for the time being quiet. But also, he made pretty clear, the special counsel, that the idea that the former president is calling him deranged and mentally ill is something that maybe shouldn't be happening. So let me ask you, as his attorney in this criminal case, do you want your client to stop speaking publicly like this? Using terms like that.
This case was brought by the Biden administration in the middle of a political campaign, and with the realization that people are out there campaigning for office. I'm not involved in the campaign. I'm involved in representing.
Totally understand.
Mr.
You're
Trump
not his campaign manager.
You
are his lawyer. As his lawyer, would you want a client to say things like this about the special counsel?
One thing that we are going to do is fight this very, very unusual, outside of the bounds, criminal prosecution of First Amendment rights vigorously in court. My focus is on addressing the issues. One of the issues that the Biden administration will have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that Donald Trump had corrupt intent, had criminal intent when he protested the results of the 2020 election. That's core freedom of speech. That's core
let's talk about this. You've talked about freedom of speech
under our Constitution.
You've talked about freedom of speech a lot. I want you to listen to what Donald Trump's own former attorney general said about that argument.
I really don't think that's a valid argument. He can say whatever he wants. He can even lie. He can even tell people that the election was stolen when he knew better. Free speech doesn't give you the right to engage in a fraudulent conspiracy.
Your response?
Well, first of all, there was no fraudulent conspiracy. That's part of the reality of the defense. What President Trump was entitled to do, and what Mr. Barr misses, and I'm not sure he's read all the cases, but when it comes to political speech, you can not only advocate for a position, but you can take action. You can petition. You can ask even your vice president to pause the vote for a period of time in order to allow the states to recertify.
Which is what this indictment alleges.
What was it?
It alleges that he caused actions like approving fake.
What was it?
I'll tell
that
you
was
what the
fraudulent.
I'll tell you what the
was
indictment.
What was that?
I'll tell you what the
No,
indictment says. The indictment
ahead.
says that
Right.
he attempted to cause actions like approving fake electors, opening sham fraud investigations, and obstructing the certification of the election. Whether he can prove that, that's going to happen in the trial. I'm just saying what's in the indictment.
Yeah, but right, and let me take the first thing, the question about electors, okay? Alternate electors are used in every 4-year cycles, okay? The Senate parliamentarian acknowledged to Vice President Pence that they always receive protest alternate electors. None of those electors were counted. Vice President Pence was completely aware of the nature of the
They weren't
protest,
counted because Mike Pence rejected this scheme. That's why they weren't counted.
Absolutely, and that's how the of course, and that's how the political process works. But there was no defrauding, there was no trickery, there was no deceit because
if Mike Pence had said yes, then that's exactly what would have happened.
No, because
and that's only one.
Because thankfully, with freedom
of
the press, you have to let me finish though, because no, but you asked me a question, and I hope you can let me finish, because the government alleges deceit or trickery, and all of this played out in the open. It's all free speech. There was a Supreme Court decision, Hammerschmidt, which is right on point, that says when you're exercising free speech, you're not engaging in a fraud on the government. And that's what, unfortunately, most people don't understand.
That's just one example
now, it's
of
very
the
political.
actions. That's just one example of the actions in this indictment.
But you're entitled.
And this is a long list that we've compiled from the indictment. I mean, it's more than a dozen, not speech, actions that the former president allegedly took.
Like what?
I mean, where do I even start?
What? Tell me.
Asking the Arizona speaker to interfere with ascertaining Arizona's electors. The Justice Department to conduct.
Asking is speech.
But any alleged
asking is speech.
But any alleged almost all alleged criminal activity has to do with using words and as speech. And that's listen.
What you don't
this is obviously the defense that you're going to use, and it will be fascinating to see how it works out in a court of law. I want to move on to another issue.
I got to tell you though. But you make an interesting point, because you're saying that asking is action. No, asking is aspirational. Asking is not action. It's core free speech. The press should be defending free speech in this case.
Let's talk about something else that you've repeatedly said, and that is that the former president ultimately asked his vice president only for a pause in the electoral count.
Right.
But it followed.
That was one of the things. Ultimately, the final ask. Right.
Okay.
The final ask in the ellipse speech was that, which President Trump was following the advice of his lawyer.
Okay. The word ultimately, I've heard you use many times. The word ultimately is doing a lot of work in that sentence. I know you're intentionally using the word ultimately because
ultimately because it's the truth.
I know. You're right. It is the truth, because at that point he was asking for a pause, but it's only because for many other asks before that, what the former president was asking Mike Pence to do was to completely stop it and reject it. And that is the point that Mike Pence is making. It's that it got to the point where he said pause because Mike Pence says, I'm not going to reject it. Sure.
Okay. So what we have, and many people don't understand this, is a memo from John Eastman, an esteemed constitutional scholar, laying out a number of scenarios. Those scenarios were presented to Vice President Pence. He considered them, and as a constitutional matter, he rejected them. One of the last and the ultimate requests that President Trump made was to pause the voting for 10 days to allow the states to recertify or certify or audit, and Mr. Pence rejected that as well. After that, there was a peaceful transition of power. So that's how the constitutional works.
Okay. What happened on January 6th was not peaceful. I want to ask you something about John Eastman, because you talked a lot about how he's a respected constitutional attorney.
The transfer of power was certainly peaceful.
Did you see what happened on January 6th? Did that look peaceful?
And by the way, did you? I'm not saying that was in any way inappropriate, but the ultimate power of the presidency was transferred to Mr. Biden.
I just want to quickly ask
We all know
about John
that, as you
Eastman.
do.
John Eastman said, according to this indictment, that he actually, even when he was talking to the vice president's counsel, that he thought that his plan to reject the slate of electors would be rejected by the Supreme Court. 9-0.
He thought he was right. And by the way, that proposal was not the ultimate one presented to Vice President Pence. But what happens in the course of a constitutional discussion like this is all legal theories are discussed and analyzed. And once again, what President Trump was doing is within the reality and the realm of free speech. He's asking his vice president, what about taking this course of action? Ultimately, his vice president rejected all of the proposals that were made.
Before I let you go about the trial.
But you have to let me finish. No. One quick response. What President Trump did not do is direct Vice President Pence to do anything. He asked him in an aspirational way. Asking is covered by the First Amendment.
And said some pretty intense stuff online that caused people to think that they needed to build gallows outside of the Capitol. But we can talk about that in another time. Would you be open to having cameras in the courtroom?
And he's not being charged for that, by the way. And by the way, that's not not part of the criminal case. So just to be clear,
it is. You're right about that.
So you can say that politically, but it's not in the case.
Would you be open to having cameras in the courtroom during this trial?
I personally want the public to see what's going on in this country right now. I want the public to see what kind of prosecution is going on.
So yes.
And I want the public to see the evidence. If you ask me what my personal opinion is, the answer is absolutely, I'd like to see that. What I'm concerned about is the government has already signaled that they don't want the press and the American people to see the evidence in this case because they filed an emergency protective order to prevent that from happening.
Thank you so much, John Lauro. Appreciate your time this morning.
Great to see you. Absolutely.